Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome to my Lyney guide where I'll be going over artifacts, weapons, teams, optimal rotations, and a showcase of his damage at the end. Lyney is a more complex character to understand, so if you need help with maximizing your Lyney, then keep on watching. So as I've said, Lyney requires a good reading of his skills in order to play him optimally, and his set isn't really as straightforward. Lyney is a bow user who mainly uses charged attacks to deal damage. While his entire kit has great multipliers and overall damage, his bread and butter will still be his charge attacks. Lyney, much like Ganyu or Tinari, has 2 charge levels, and what happens at charge level 2 is that he spawns a cat that acts as a taunt, as well as a deadly explosion hiding behind that menacing face of his. Each time you fire a charge attack, the cat respawns its location to where you shot the arrow, and it can taunt enemies for 5 seconds, and also it can explode either if it's destroyed or if the time runs out. So although the taunt inherits Lyney's HP, it does not actually scale off of HP, it scales off of his attack. Aside from that, Lyney can also gain up to 5 prop surplus stacks, which can further boost his damage for his elemental skill, which we will also get into soon. Anyhow, Lyney also sacrifices his HP in order to obtain said stacks. You do stop gaining the stacks from his charge attacks once he reaches 60% of his max HP. Once you hit that threshold, you no longer gain the stacks, but I will actually go into more depth once we enter the rotation section. Aside from that, there is also another bonus to his charge attacks where sometimes something called a Spirit Breath Torn will spawn that deals additional pyro damage, further just boosting your DPS, which is a nice benefit overall. Onto his elemental skill, Lyney deals AoE pyro damage as well as recovering HP that you lost while making the charge attacks. As I mentioned, the elemental skill does gain a lot of power from gaining the stacks, so it's recommended to use this skill after you have gained some stacks. Also, his skill can deal even more damage if you have a TNT cat present on the field. The cat will explode on command and deal damage equivalent to a pyrotechnic strike. His skill is essential in maintaining his health as well as his AoE damage capabilities. Moving on to the burst, you get to transform into the menacing cat and personally scare your opponents as a cat, wandering around waiting to explode. Do note that you get to deal only 1 instance of pyro damage before detonating, but luckily we can't cancel the burst early by pressing the elemental skill. So you deal 1 pyro attack when sprinting by the enemies, but on explosion you deal AoE pyro damage, as well as gaining 1 additional stack, and you also respawn a cat that taunts. As for your passive talents, the first one boosts your attack as well as gains you energy back when Lyney loses his health by dealing the charge attacks, which is a nice bonus, but his most important passive is the second one, where as long as enemies are affected by pyro, Lyney gets a 60% additional damage boost. Not only that, but Lyney also gains 20% extra damage for any other pyro character in your team, but do know that this is limited to a 100% damage bonus, including the first 60% boost. So you only need a total of 3 pyro characters, including Lyney, in your team to maximize this damage buff. So how do we actually put all of this into work? Focusing on Lyney first, you can either start with the burst or end with the burst. I usually recommend ending the rotation with the burst for the following reasons. You start out with doing some charge attacks, usually around 3 to 4, and then you gain the stacks. And then you activate the burst to gain an additional stack, and then you use your elemental skill to deal more damage and also healing back the HP that you have lost earlier. To put this into your team, you start with your supporting characters, including your healing, as you can only gain around 3 stacks by charge attacks without the healer, because as I mentioned previously, that once Lyney reaches 60% of his health, he can no longer gain stacks by charge attacks. So a healer is important for optimal DPS so that you can keep gaining the stacks. Anyhow, activate all of your supports and then do 4 charged attacks, activate the burst, end it shortly, and then press your skill again. Note, your skill doesn't proc by ending the burst, so you do have to press it again actually to use your elemental skill. So this is overall what I found to be the best way to play Lyney, but you can and might need to use your burst first depending on the situation, of course, but overall, I prefer leaving it to the end. Moving on to artifacts, Lyney does actually have quite a few options. His best in slot is the new Maréchaussée Hunter set, which gives you 15% extra normal and charged attack damage on the 2-piece, but also on the 4-piece. As long as your total HP is changing either up or down, your crit rate increases by 12% for 3 stacks, so it gives you a total of 36% extra crit rate, which is insanely good and matches Lyney's playstyle perfectly. Other 4-piece set alternatives are a 4-piece Wanderers, Vermilions, Shimenawas, And Lava Walkers are great options until you can get a proper 4-piece of the Marechaussee. For 2-piece, 2-piece sets, you can mix and match any of the 2 from the ones mentioned previously, and as well as any other 2-piece attack boosting set. As for substats, you'll want attack on Sands, pyro damage on the Goblet, and usually crit damage for Circlet. Crit rate is fine, especially if you're not using the Marechaussee set, but Lyney's Ascension already gives you crit rate, as well as the additional 36 from the Marechaussee set, so these 2 give you plenty enough crit rate alone. However, this once again depends on the set that you're using and also the weapon, but overall crit damage will have more benefit overall. Moving on to weapons, his best in slot will be of course the new bow called the First Great Magic, as this was created for Lyney, but another great option is the Aqua Simulacra, which gives you a lot of crit damage as well as additional 20% damage boost. Other options include other 5-star crit weapons such as Polar Star, Skyward Harp, and Thundering Pulse, but do note that crit rate weapons can often be overkill as mentioned when I was covering the artifact. For 4-star weapons, the best options include Viridescent Hunt, the new Battle Pass Scion Bow, and of course the free craftable prototype percent. So these are overall the best weapons for Lyney, and now we can move on to teams. As mentioned before, Lyney does have that passive that grants you additional damage boost for additional Pyro teammates, so you will always want at least 1 but no more than 2 additional Pyro members in your team. Usually Bennett is a non-tradable option as he is one of the best supports in the game, as well as a healer, and him being Pyro just makes Bennett Lyney's ultimate bestie. For overall team building, since Lyney is a bow charge attack user, you'll either want a shielder or someone that will absorb damage and stop you from getting interrupted, which means that someone actually gets to finally shine, which is Dehya. Dehya works great with Lyney since she is a pyro unit, but also her damage absorption and anti-interruption buff is very useful in this setting. So aside from Dehya, shielders such as Zhongli, Sifra Yanfei, Layla, Kirara, Shenyan, and Baizhu work well. Toma is fine, but he can be a bit of a DPS loss since you do need to do some normal attacks to activate the shield. But aside from those, another great teammates to bring is of course Kazuha for his insane elemental damage boost, but his exceptional crowd controlling capabilities as well. But other animal units running a 4-piece Viridescence such as Venti or Lyney's sister Lynette will also work just fine. For other pyro characters, of course, Xiangling is an amazing option to bring along and a second to none pyro unit in this game. So overall, your team should look something like this. So of course Lyney, then you want to bring along his bestie Bennett, and then Dehya and Kazuha, or a Shielder and Xiangling. These are overall the best teams, but Lyney can be used in non-mono pyro teams, but it's overall just not worth it, and he was just intended to be used in a mono pyro setting. But for non-mono pyro teams, Ganyu is of course a great melt inhibitor, but Ayato is also a great option to use for vape teams, but with Lyney you do want to use a mono pyro team. This covers his best teams, and it's now time to move on to Lyney's showcase, and let's just hop right into it. So this will cover Lyney. Lyney is truly a great DPS option. Overall, he has exceeded my expectations quite a lot and will definitely go down as amazing Pyro main DPS. If you do like his playstyle and you like Lyney himself, he's a great DPS and a great addition to your account. Now, of course, he does have some downsides which you should keep in mind. One, that he's a charged bow DPS, so if you play mobile, he is pretty uncomfy to use unless you use a controller. But also, he can be limited to use as he excels in mono pyro teams, so he can't really be used in every setting. But still, regardless of those, he's still a great option and he is still usable in a lot of scenarios. If you enjoyed this video and if you found this guide to be helpful, then please hit the thumbs up and also hit that subscribe button so you can see more videos like this, and I will see you all later. Bye!